Hey guys. Man, this almost feels weird. It's been a minute. There's been a lot of times I've tried to record, but then nothing ever sounds right. Not that it needs to sound right, because this is unfiltered, but I'm sitting here, I'm working on some art. I've recently decided to try and channel some of my feelings about my life into art to kind of see it visually, because I think for so long I've felt as though these things weren't true. I'm writing that down actually because I'm trying to find words for how I felt as a child. But for so long I just didn't think that these things were true, or I just couldn't bear to believe them. Sometimes I get so overcome with emotion that I just really don't understand it, and I don't know how to sort it out, and it just ends up feeling like when you're wearing an itchy sweater. But that's what it feels like on my brain. My brain feels like an itchy sweater. And then I have just anxiety or paranoia about stuff. For example, I've posted quite a few reels on some stories about my mom, which some of those stories I'd already talked about on my podcast, but I figured to get them out more to the world, I would do some reels. And I did a trilogy, kind of just rambling about... It was organized rambling, though. I had wrote some notes because my brain just felt so chaotic, and I thought about all these things that my mom had me a part of, and I think I've somewhat somehow unlocked something in my brain. I think it's been a mixture of so many different things, just growth, getting sober again, which of course is just weed. I was just smoking a little bit, which actually I was smoking way less than I ever have and using way less than I ever had, but it was just enough to be annoying. I don't need to be doing this type of thing, and my desire for it changed, so I just stopped doing it. But it was a mix of that, and it was a mix of being around other people that were either healed or not healed, and just learning from that, good videos I've been watching, books I've been reading, the Bible, God, just so many different things. I went to a funeral for a family member, and I actually saw my mom there, which, man, it's really been a while since I recorded something. I hadn't seen my mom in 2.5 years. It's just been so much, so I really do believe I unlocked something. And actually, now that I bring up that funeral, I think that was the main thing that did it. I think there was a lot of things that happened there that it's funny because you always are going to experience things differently than other people did, right? So people could call me a liar, or I made something up, or I took it the wrong way or something like that. But you can't stop how I perceive things. You can't stop my perception. I'm actually going to write that one down too. Tried. Sorry, I'm working on a mini, I have all these canvases in front of me and shit, and I have all these different ideas, so I'm trying to make sure I write them down because I just don't want to lose them. But you can't stop my perception, and I'll just talk a little bit about the funeral and then how it made me feel and how I think it unlocked that stuff. Man, I wish I had a cup of coffee. I went to a funeral for my great aunt who had been sick for a while, and my grandmother was taking care of her, and her sister. And it'd been pretty shitty for the family. It was a lot, and I wasn't really a part of it because I was either in Florida or I was back in a different location in Michigan, and it was just, I'm also a growing adult, and I think that they also respected the fact that I was a growing adult, and that wasn't necessarily my responsibility, you know what I mean? Nor was it a probability that I'd even be able to do that, but I went, and I think that my family didn't think I was going to go. I think that I wanted to go because I felt in my heart that it was the right thing to do. And I also, as a young girl inside of me, felt like maybe this would be a chance to just not necessarily talk a whole bunch of things through with my mother, because this is a funeral and it's not about that. I 100% see that. But just like touch base or just feel things out, you know. And I went with Kyle. Kyle looked really dapper. He was in a suit, and I was wearing a skirt and a sweater. I was in all black. And, you know, I pulled up to this funeral, and I walked in and immediately was greeted by a cousin. And this is funny. I don't enjoy the fact that people use someone's career or job as a way to understand them. You know, they asked me what I was doing and, you know, how I'm doing, of course, but like more so on a career level. And it's like, you know, going to school doesn't mean shit when you're a traumatized person that needs to figure out her own shit. You know, going to school isn't going to work for someone like me. And I'm sitting here right now, and I'm not fucking selling myself short, because there's people that want to talk to me like that. There's people that tell me that going to school is the right thing. And I think everybody right now is realizing that it's not. But I think that there's these people that have this expectation that I should have done that, or I should be working some job that's, you know, crazy or cool or making money or at least up to their standards. When in all actuality, these people have no fucking idea what my mother put me through. And I will preface and I will say that I had great times in my childhood. I'm not going to sit here and say that I did not. You know, me and my mom were water park fanatics, and we would go to a whole bunch of different water parks. We've been to one in Wisconsin, different ones in Michigan, Ohio. You know, I remember running up and down with my mom trying to get as many rides in as possible. Those were fun times, okay? I'm not sitting here trying to boo-hoo my entire fucking childhood. And there were great family times, playing cards with family members, my mom, my grandma. You know, they're, you know, sledding in the snow and getting hot chocolate. Like, there's so many good things. But based on, like, my last podcast that I did with duality, it's like there's room for both. There's room for hot chocolate and sledding and giggles, and then there's also room for, you know, my mom calling tickling sex, or, making me touch a unicorn statue's penis on one of those water park trips, which at the time I didn't think any of this shit was wrong. You know what I mean? I didn't see it as wrong. I thought it was just normal. This is how I live my life. This is my mom, you know? You know, there's room for, you know, the fact that I didn't have a father, and then my mom made me feel guilty if I did want to talk to him, and those looks that your parent gives you when you're with a narcissistic parent, where they just make you feel like the worst human being on the planet, the silent treatment. There's room for all those things, along with going to the pool and eating peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, you know? And that's what I think is the most confusing. The most confusing thing is the duality of both of these things, and it almost, in my mind, trying to make sense of it as someone that just woke up to it 2.5, 3 years ago, I try and make sense of it, but it almost negates the bad things, and I'm trying to not let that happen anymore, because I need to process it, deal with it, realize it, face it, and not push it aside or try to compartmentalize it, because guess what? I don't have enough compartments. There's not enough drawers. There's not enough baskets. There's not enough hangers to hang this shit in the closet and shut the door. You know, there's not enough. There's not enough shelves. You know, so I'm bothered by that question, and I think it just shows how shallow people are, where they are concerned with what you're doing for a living instead of how you're doing while you're living. So, especially when, like, you have an idea that my mom might not be all the way, like, there. You know what I mean? Like, so, because you've known her longer than I've been alive. You know what I mean? So it's like, don't play fool. And that's another whole fucking thing, is people trying to fool my ass, and I don't appreciate it. But, you know, I was greeted by that, and genuinely she seemed happy to see me, and that was very nice. And I saw my mother. There was in front of the casket, there was a couch and some chairs. It was a very nice service, to be honest. It was actually just beautiful. They made it very warm and welcoming, and it was very beautiful, just gorgeous. And for the type of occasion, of course, the candles and soft lighting and fun music and, a true celebration of life. And I sat next to my mother. I walked right up and I sat in a chair next to the couch on which she was sitting at. I had not seen my mother in 2.5 years. And I was coming into this as what I later talked about in therapy was an accidental type of like self-sabotage thing, where that little girl in me was so loud that I want, maybe this will be different. Maybe I'll be able to talk to her. Maybe she'll apologize for something. Maybe she'll take accountability for something. Maybe we could plan a date to speak together. You know what I mean? Like, or maybe she's in therapy and maybe we could go to therapy together. I'm thinking all these different things, right? And I sit down and I turn to my left and I say, "Hi, Mom." And she doesn't say hi. She nods her head with a slight glance and stares back ahead straight. I end up giving my grandmother a hug and saying hello, and got up. My uncle, this is a great uncle, not my first close uncle, but which nobody's close anymore. I don't really know how to describe this, but the uncle of my mother, he shakes my hand. I don't know if he didn't recognize who I was or what, or what. This is so bizarre. I don't get it. And I'm a girl too. It'd be different if I was a guy, but it's, you shake my hand, I'm like, I'm your great niece. You know what I mean? But anyway, I kind of stand over back in the corner and stuff like that, and I'm talking with Kyle, and my uncle comes up and he says hello, and he's very friendly and nice. And something started to occur to me where, and this is probably going to be a long-winded story, but it all comes back to how I unlocked some stuff and some realizations. But I have this thing where I swear there's eyelashes in my eye, or cat hair always gets in my eye because it gets stuck in my mascara and then it puts it in my eye. It's so annoying. So I get distracted, but I started to pick up on something where, and this is not, I don't want a horn to toot, okay? That's not my prerogative. My prerogative isn't to say that I'm better than any of these people. I come from these people. I'm not better than anybody. I just am perhaps more healed or more educated on trauma, emotion, and today's world, right? Maybe that's how we'll say it. And again, I made a little post, a little reel saying, I'm not saying any of this shit to be vindictive either. I think maybe in the past I had some anger and I didn't understand how to deal with it, so I vented on here. But this is my platform. This is my log. This is my diary. This is my online public journal, And so there's videos that I don't like that I have up there, but they show how far I've come, and I can respect those, and also hopefully have my audience respect the fact that people fucking change. You know what I mean? You're not just one person. Again, that duality thing. Everybody's so vast. Your expression of yourself is so vast, and it's so different, and it's ever changing all the time as you grow. But I don't say any of this to be vindictive. I truly hope that my family could eventually find the light, or find some sort of understanding, or take some sort of accountability for themselves, even not for me, but just for themselves, so they can live a happier life, because it's very apparent that they aren't happy. But yeah, my uncle came up to me, and that was fine. And, we stayed till they were going to close the casket, and my mom continued to ignore me. Which again, it's a funeral. So if she doesn't want to speak and she's upset, then that's very fair. We were in the procession over to the cemetery, and we got out. I caught up a little bit and walked with my grandma, and then they have like a few seats for like immediate family to sit at the cemetery underneath the tent, and read words or anything. And I had been gone from the family for a while, not even like an in and out thing. I had seen my uncle. Now this is 2 times in the last 2.5 years. So since I left. I should probably redo the math on that and make sure I'm saying that right, but it doesn't really matter. And then I had seen my grandma, this was in January, so I had seen her in October. Yeah, and I walked in under the tent, and my grandma was, of course, going to go sit, because it's her sister. And my uncle and my mom, it's their aunt. And I stood back from those chairs with Kyle. I was going to stand, and then my grandma, this was something that, regardless of like my grandma's enabling with the family and the addictions and the abuse and not really mentioning or saying anything, she's very old school, I don't really hold that against her. I'm trying not to anymore because it's a generational thing. But this is something that really meant something to me. It meant a lot to me, where she goes, Nina, you can go ahead and sit down. And that was basically she invited me to sit in the immediate family row, you know what I mean? And it just felt nice to be acknowledged as a part of something, So my grandma was trying to sit down, and then I was sitting down, and then my mom gets up and hops a seat over, like somewhat violently towards my uncle. And I just thought that really, because there was other people under that tent, so it really shows the true colors of my mother, where it's like, this is a funeral and you're doing it. It's kind of gave me some relief. And then I thought about this for obviously like a month after, still thinking about it, not ruminating, but just using it as a validation for why I left, because I'm also my mom's only child. So I don't have any siblings or anything. There wasn't any like, scapegoat, golden child type of thing. It was just me and her, which was probably the root of a lot of issues. No like buffer. And my mother read something that she had wrote, is nice. And I tried to tell her that I liked it, and she didn't really look at me, which is fine. Again, she's emotional at a funeral, and that's fine. I'm not taking any of this truly very personally. And I ended up reading the prayer, flubbed a word because I didn't know it, which embarrassed me, but whatever. POR, as my therapist says, and maybe you guys could use this, press on regardless. So any performance or anything you have to do that you're uncomfortable with, but you slightly mess up, it's just press on. Because you're usually also the one that notices it, or like takes that as like the key thing in your performance or whatever, After, nobody really had anything to say, and we left, and my grandma looked at me and she said, well, what are you guys doing? And, thanks for coming. And she goes, you guys stopping by? And I'm like, well, would you like me to? And she goes, well, I'll be over, blah, blah, blah. And I said, okay, well, if you'd like me to stop by, then I will. And I thought like there would be like some cheese and crackers or something. Not for me. I don't want cheese and crackers, but I thought like, cheese, crackers, beer, wine, but there was no like after thing that we had done for my uncle. I think it had just been such a long process for everybody that we were glad that she could rest in peace and everything. And I went over and we spent like about 2-3 hours with my grandma, just hanging out, talking, kind of sharing a little bit about what we've been doing. And, I'm going to probably leave some things out because I'm not here to talk about what my grandma said or not said about whatever. But I'll put it this way. I don't think that... I think that the people in my family and the people that know my family knew something wasn't quite right. And now that I'm an adult and I'm healthy and I'm beautiful and I'm smart and I'm talented and I have some semblance of peace, I feel like they're almost intimidated. They're weirded out, jealous, I don't know, and confused. Because these people know where I came from. Someone's mother that was there, I told her where I was living, and she looked at me and she said, "Good for you." And, that along with like everyone's shock and their demeanor around me, where, and also when we were leaving, as well as when we were leaving the cemetery, my uncle gave me a hug and told me that he was happy that I was happy, and that I looked good and everything. And that was very nice. And that's really all I need from him, I think. So that was the encounters that I've had with him the last 2 times have been fine, so I'm really cool with that. And he looked good. He looked like he had lost weight. So good for him. But these people can't really look me in the eye. Distant family members like that cousin that, came up to me or whatever, they can look me in the eye because they don't know, but it's like you knew exactly what was going on. Just to give everybody a reminder, I think this is the perfect story to tell because it is able to sum up a couple different things in my childhood that just what it was. So when I was the day before my 15th birthday, and I've told this story before, it's on the reels that I just made, the trilogy about the crazy things my mom did. My mom would call tickling sex. Now, there was tickling. I'm not saying that there wasn't. My armpits, my ribs, whatever, like, ha ha ha. There were times where I didn't enjoy it and I wanted her to stop, and then she was annoyed with me. There were times where she grazed my privates and I said, ew, and she was upset with me. There were moments where she would, moan my name sexually. She sexualized me as a child. And I also have a story that I also told on those reels, which I'm not going to get into right now, of a vivid memory that I had about what had happened with me and her. It was consistent sexualization. There's something called covert incest, which is basically like being way too open, from my understanding. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but like covert incest, from how I've understood it, is where you're talking too much about sex or you're acting sexual in front of your children. So it's not maybe the direct act of molestation or sexual abuse, but it's not appropriate. And there were so many things in my childhood that were not appropriate for me to be around. But if I were to say anything, I was the problem. So the day before my 15th birthday, my mom's tickling me in my bed. This is sophomore year of high school. The next day, I needed to go take a Spanish and a math final. And then me and my grandmother and my mom would go and get some birthday lunch. And that day, before, my birthday, my mom was tickling me, and which I was also doing things that a lot of children, young adults weren't doing with their parents anymore. But my mom had a hold on me, and then that was the bond that I had with her, this weird, like I believed in Santa, like way too late. She wanted to keep me naive. And again, I don't think that she intentfully did these things, like sat down and said, I'm going to sexualize my daughter. No, these were just things that I believe were probably passed down generationally, and she didn't know that there was something wrong with them. But at the same time, she wasn't going to go tell people, oh, I do tickle sex with my daughter. Like, that's not, you know what I mean? Like, no, so there was that level, and I also knew not to talk about it. So that there's that weird level. But the day before this happened, that I had to go take the final, it was my 15th birthday, my mom gave me my first hickey ever on my neck. And it started off as a tickling thing, but like, I don't really see why my mom's mouth should be like that on my neck. And then I was immediately uncomfortable and angry and knew I had to go to school with it the next day. She tried to like put toothpaste on it. She heard that helped, and it was just ridiculous. And everybody knew I was like somewhat of a weird kid and I didn't have a boyfriend. So I don't know. Hopefully nobody thought anything really horrible had happened to me. I guess in retrospect it did. But, my grandmother saw that and didn't do anything. And they laughed it off, my mom and her. and again, I'm not saying this shit to I love my fucking grandmother. I love her. She's funny as hell. She's cool as shit. She's a good person. I genuinely don't think that anybody could figure out how to deal with that. You know what I mean? But then there were other instances, like I remember my mom, like I vividly remember my mom and her arguing, and then my mom and me apparently, like we stormed, I didn't want to leave, but I stormed off, and then I was crying and I was looking at my grandma and I was sad. It's like, but then after, there was a time I screamed at my uncle and we had an argument. My mom let me take her car home, but nobody said anything. I remember that too. I got in a big argument with my uncle, and I was pissed, and I looked at my grandma and my mother, and they had their heads down. They didn't say anything. And that was like a pivotal moment for me too, which like I still hung out with my family a lot and visited a lot. And cause that was like somewhat of my second home. I spent so many nights with my grandma eating popcorn and goulash and stuff like that. And, but that was a moment I realized none of you are going to say anything. Even if I was wrong, or even if he's wrong, like, is anybody going to say anything? I'm the only one that thinks to say anything now. Like what? And I think I was 18, maybe a little younger, 17 or 18. But yeah, so these moments all together kind of symbolize the abuse I was going through, and then the silencing of all of it and the no discussion of any of it. So they all know these things. They see, because my family also, I don't believe them to be dumb. My mom is an avid reader. She almost graduated college. She did put herself through massage school. My mom, she wrote my papers in high school for me sometimes. Like, she's a very intelligent human being, and I think that's what makes a narcissist like even more powerful is their intelligence. My uncle is very mechanically inclined, extremely mechanically inclined, very, very smart when it comes to, machinery and math. I'm assuming, I don't like in science, like that type of shit. Like I think he's pretty good with. And, my grandma, she was a tech for like, I want to say 25 years, give or take. And she had went to college, and she had raised 2 kids, she's intelligent when it comes to a lot of different things and math and shit like that. I remember certain scenarios, she was good. Like, they're not dumb people. So then to know that they aren't dumb, they aren't, they're not retarded. They don't have they have mental issues, but not mental issues that are categorized as anything as like, you can't drive or like you need to be in this class. Right. But to know that they didn't say anything, I think that the biggest thing, because I said jealous, I said confused for all the reasons like why they maybe don't look me in the eye. I think that it's guilt. I think there's probably a bit of gratitude that, I came out and I'm okay. But I think that they can't look me in the eye because they know that they could have done better. And they know that my mother's behavior was not acceptable. They'd seen it. They know her longer than me. They know things I don't know about her. You know what I mean? So it's like, I don't know. There's just so many things. There's so many things that are popping in my head. I'm going to try and keep it on track. But, after that funeral and the way that they looked at me, and which, again, wasn't a hateful look at all. It seemed as though some people were happy to see me, But I genuinely think that there's an intimidation, jealousy, guilt, shame, all within that because, they tried to silence and keep these things under wrap. Like nobody knew about certain things. Like people didn't understand what my family was really doing, and what was going on. And I don't think anybody's family portrays exactly what's going on. You know what I mean? But, that unlocked for me a lot of relief, the funeral and everything that was said and what was done that day. And I actually ended up having a great time with my grandma too while we were down there. But it unlocked for me the ability to know that now I can fully walk away from my mother. It unlocked the ability for me, even though it's hard, to start talking more about what happened to me and how I view things. Because like I said, you can't stop my perception. So that might not have been, some things might not have been how I actually think that they were. But there, of course, was no clarification because nobody wanted to talk about these things. So I can only take them at face value for what I know. And, that was early January, and that was after Christmas, which that was a bit interesting. I just think I've now unlocked the ability to start looking at these things, and it's really hard and it's really painful because I think for a long time I didn't feel as though they were my stories. I had my mom tell me lots of times, that's not how it happened. That's not what I meant by that. You're wrong. You're lying. The gaslighting was insane. Then the love bombing after the gaslighting or the abuse, there wasn't many sorries. It was just, hey, I know I yelled at you last night. So here we're going to go get ice cream, or we're going to go to your favorite park, or the thing is, she felt guilty, but she wouldn't say sorry. And that's the main problem with these people, is that they don't say sorry. When I got into that argument with my uncle, he didn't say sorry to me after. My grandma's never said sorry for ignoring some of the abuse that she had to know was going on. A lot of it she didn't, I'm sure. Same with my uncle, so I'm not blaming them, but nobody said sorry. There was no sorry. It was sorry from me to my mom, because that was expected. But there was no sorry. There was no, when I'm sleeping with different guys and spend the night at guys' houses when I'm 18, 19 years old, there was mild, my mom almost for some reason, and I told the pimping out story on there as well, on my reels, but there was some sort of ulterior motive for when I did spend the night, because I don't know what she was doing, or she didn't really care. There were times where she said, hey, if you want a relationship, don't sleep over at us. But it's you made it so I didn't have a father. And then my own father told me I was shacking up with the only man that's ever taken care of me and treated me well. And then try to excuse his abandonment and tell me that he wants to show me his court papers of him, quote, trying. But you made it so I didn't have a father, and then you judged my actions. It's so again, her little bits of advice or her judgment, and I don't really know how I got onto this, but those little things, it's you need to take the accountability for not letting my father be a part of my life, and then also choosing to get pregnant on purpose, trapping the motherfucker, and then making it so that I had this life where you thought you were all that I needed. And then when I requested, or it looked like I needed more, you were insulted. That's what I need a sorry for. I can handle it all. I can bear all of the pain. I can bear the trauma. I can keep going to therapy and stay sober and meditate and do art and write my book and talk about it with Kyle and read books on it and read the Bible. I can do all those things, but it would just be so nice to hear a fucking sorry. You know what I mean? Or any type of accountability. So, like I said, unlocking all of these things, and I'm posting these reels, I'm sure a lot of people think I'm lying, which is fine. I really couldn't make this shit up, the stuff that I've talked about on my reel. I post these because for the very least, it's entertainment for people to listen to, but I'm putting them out there so that they're out there, and I know that they're real and they're my stories, where I'm claiming it. I'm building trust within myself, because nobody wants to make up the fact that their mom molested them. As a daughter, right? It doesn't make sense. I've been trying to look it up, articles on it. I can't find very much, because it's not something that typically happens. But it's like, I'm not making that up. I've told that story so many times, and it's on my reels if you want to hear it. I think it's in the my part 2, the crazy things my mom's done. But like, I don't want to make these, I can't make these things up. I have no intention of doing that. It's all true. And that's the hardest part, like one of the things I think about is the babysitter that my mom would leave me with, where she worked with this chick, and she's now in jail for homicide. And she would leave me with her felon boyfriend who sucked his thumb at night. And she was a woman that beat the fuck out of her kid so bad that me and my mom felt bad for that kid. So, but then my mom had me in these situations. My back's tight. Ugh, been having the worst back problems lately. I think it's probably all related to something. But yeah, all these situations, I'm remembering all these situations where it's a flood, and then there's all these feelings, but I was told I wasn't allowed to feel, mostly because my mother felt too much. But I wasn't allowed to feel, so now I don't even know the names of these emotions. I don't know who I am. And that I wasn't allowed to build a sense of self because that was a threat to my mother. I can't build a sense of self because that was a threat to her. And then when I'm working on a poem where, I immediately, as a child, I was a shine. I had a shine. And because when I was younger, I was easy to control, right? But then as I grow older, I gain my opinions, I gain knowledge, I have some understanding. That's a threat. I build relationships, I have friends, I have boyfriend. That's a threat because that could unlock the secrets that she doesn't want people to know. About her drinking, about her behavior, about her addictions, about her problems with jobs, with like whatever it is, that was a liability for her in the way that she behaved, that because she doesn't want people to know that, because it's ugly behavior. That it's pure narcissism. It's any type. This is the same thing as just dating a dude and he's a narcissist. He's the most charming guy everywhere, but then when you are home with him, he changes, right? Like, it's the same thing, but I think there's definitely times where that type of relationship can be worse, but I think it is worse, not to minimize anybody or any experience. I think it's just different. I'll just say it's different when it's your parent. And when your mom is your biggest bully, your first bully, and she's competing with you, it's one thing to like show baby pictures and do a little teasing in front of their friends, I guess, maybe. But then to just be rude to me and like, she just made me beg for her love and attention, especially when I had like friends over that she liked, then my friends wouldn't really gang up on me, but like she would, and she would say fucked up shit to my friends about me. She always wanted to put something on me, whatever it was, and then not, like an example, her and her friend from her waitressing job, who was close to my age as well at the time, not too close, like she was in her probably early mid-20s and I was probably like 16, something like that. But we were, walking in, they had a bottle of booze, it broke on the cement, they were trying to salvage it or whatever, but they were talking, my mom was talking about how I was, vegan, but I don't clean up in the kitchen well enough or whatever, and like you need to clean when you cook. And her friend was agreeing with it, and then just trying I could just sense that it was a type of like gang up, like, because there's no reason you need to tell your friend that I do that. And I'm learning. I'm a teenager. I'm learning how to keep house and shit, which keep better house than she does. That's for damn sure. No wonder she always, don't let anybody in my house. Don't let anybody in my house. It's like, yeah, this place is fucking trashed. So, yeah, it's, I couldn't say anything about her behavior because that was an immediate threat or attack on her, but yet she could judge me, demonize me, make me feel like shit. You know, I recently created a piece of art, actually yesterday. I did a mock-up of what my childhood home looked like, and I don't know, where was I going with that? Shit. Anyway, I made this art, and I'm thinking of sharing it on like a reel or something like that. But it was just, you know, the things that she would call me. It's like she called me a cunt. She called me a little bitch. She called me a liar. She called me, I know I've shared this before, but, you know, lazy bitch, lazy cunt, lazy like my father, and a loser. You're a piece of shit. You're ungrateful. You know, and then when people said that she would take anything that had, you know, my pride in it. She needed some of it for her, the enmeshment where like, you're just like me. You're just like me. It's like, but what if I don't want to be? And then she said that so much, I was like, okay, well, I'll just be just like you then. And then I realized that wasn't getting me very far. And then ironically, she didn't like that. So there was no winning, you know, but, yeah. You know, I think it's different when your mom calls you a cunt, or 3 days before your 20th birthday, you guys get in almost a brawl in your kitchen. She throws your pan of hot food on the floor and, you know, tells you to get the fuck out of her house, you know. It's because that was when I got older. When I got older, I wasn't able to be controlled. You know, it's the same thing as a, you know, narcissistic relationship. Their person wants better for themselves, you know, and they're doing things that are better. They feel threatened. And that it's the hardest thing. And I get nervous about having kids. I'm really excited for it, but it's just so much that's been unlocked right now. And it's really hard for me to fathom all of it and to try and accept it. I kind of get in like a whirlwind of all these memories and all these feelings that I can't name, and not being able to name them, I think, is causing me some anxiety. You know, it's like a baby that can't talk, but you know you need your diaper changed or you need to be fed. You know, I can't come up with these words, even though I am intelligent. I'm a writer, you know what I mean? But like, I can help people with their own feelings, you know, and I can help them understand their own feelings, but I can't understand my own, you know, kind of like one of those fucking hypocrite things. But I do think I've helped people in the past, you know, so, but yeah, just a lot of unlocking and a lot of trying to accept. And I brought up those reels because I feel uncomfortable now putting them out, because I still have that feeling in the back of my head that I'm lying, because she told me my whole life I was a liar and I made shit up, you know. But I know I didn't, because nobody wants to lie like that about their family. I wish that my family was one that I could be a part of, and if they genuinely cared, that'd be awesome. But I don't think that they're emotionally intelligent enough to do that. And that's not an insult. I just think everybody's at a different level, and they're extremely unhealed. Their coping skills aren't good. And I think I've outgrown that type of behavior, and then having to accept that, and then having to accept, you know, that I am just like a walking billboard for childhood trauma. You know what I mean? Like, it all happened to me, you know. And again, I'm not sitting here trying to play victim at all. And like I said, I'm channeling this stuff into art because I think I'm a really fucking cool person. And and with all my stories and the way that I feel, I think I could create some really amazing things, even if it is out of pain. But it's just a lot. It's so much to deal with, and to have to kind of face it alone is, I think, expected. But to do it this alone, and then in an economy where nobody has any money and there's not really opportunity, you know what I mean? There is and there isn't. You know, it's crazy. And that funeral, looking around, I'm like, especially with the distant family members and stuff, it's like, oh, you guys had no idea. And then I just wonder, it's like I'm sure some of them saw my mom hop away from me and my grandma. It's like, what did you think? Like, did y'all think that she was the most badass single mom that she portrayed herself to be? because with that came a lot of issues. And it's just, and I don't want to be, I don't identify with like the things I've been diagnosed with, ADHD, PMDD, PTSD. Like, I don't want to identify with those things anymore at all. I think they can be helpful at times, but I don't want to identify with them anymore. I just want to be able to accept them, process them, and have them be a part of me, and not have them be this weird, I'm trying to also like imagine how to describe this, like this weird cloud that kind of follows me around. I'd like to just grab the cloud and separate it, and not necessarily compartmentalize it, but just be able to be like, okay, you're my cloud. All right, and be able to give myself grace, be able to give myself acceptance and love. And I think I'm way better about that now. So much better. I'm so grateful. But it's just difficult. And, again, I will say it one more time. And this is my insecurity, but I'm not trying to be mean to my family. I'm not trying to judge them. I don't think that they knew any better, and they didn't know how to handle any of what's going on with them. There's a big tragedy in my immediate family. So, not referring to my aunt, but years and years ago before I was born. And it's like, no, I don't think anyone processed that the way that they could have. And I don't think they knew how. And I don't think that the people in the system was built yet and good enough to handle it. And then I have a poem where it's like, I was born into tragedy. I don't think I just can't fathom, having a child and then being prepared to raise that child alone, like from the conception. You know what I mean? It's different when stuff happens during pregnancy, but like, from conception, you're just like, it's just, I don't know, maybe she did think we were going to be one big happy family, but that's definitely not how it turned out, And then I just kind of felt like this, at least when I got older, I felt like this, black bastard child in a white family. And, I'm raised in a liberal town, one of the most liberal towns in the state. And, I have all these ideas, which now I'm glad I'm rid of, which I've talked about on here before. But, raised with all these ideas and then just not accepted. But it's like, but I'm raised in this. So how am I not going to? So don't look at me like I'm the problem. Look at the problem. Look at the mom, look at the parenting, look at the city, look at the school, look at where are your children getting these certain ideas, Don't look at me as though I'm the problem, right? Like, I always felt like I was the problem, and I didn't understand why. And then I woke up one day and I thought it was just my mom's drinking, but then I realized there was narcissism in there, and that was, wow, pretty much exactly 2 or 3 years ago. Yeah, that was, that had to have been, 3 years ago now, because it's 2026. Yeah, in her house, too. And then the control, there's so much control. Like, fear, like, just so much fear, and, like, I owed her something. Fear of getting in trouble all the time, not knowing what type of mood she would be in. Because sometimes when she was drinking, it was like, okay, cool, she's drinking, she's going to be chill. And then it'd be too much. And then, then she's angry and then talking about nonsense like that I didn't do. And of course, she didn't remember any of it the next day. So I just get abused and yelled at and hollered at. But to you, it isn't anything because you don't remember it, And then I think that's my biggest thing is, and I know I'm kind of rambling at this point now, but I get upset with myself because my brain feels so tired and I have such short-term memory sometimes, especially before my period, like 2 weeks before my period, I feel like I'm an idiot. And I remember it then too, because I would just block it out because she'd say fucked up shit to me at night. And in the morning, I even forgot it happened, So I guess to end this, I'm unlocking all of these things to remember that they happened. to accept that they're my story, to accept them at all, to understand or try to understand, try my best to process, and to let myself know that I'm not a liar, to stop gaslighting myself, and to stop shunning myself or shaming myself for these things. There's just so many things going on right now, where like, it's just so much. And I am very grateful to have all of this stuff unlocked and unlocking right now. I am. But it's also just very confusing and anxiety inducing. I haven't been sleeping. I've lost a lot of weight, which was purposeful, but then now I'm kind of like, I've talked about how I've had an eating disorder on here before, and how that was a pain in the ass for my mom, God forbid. And, I think I'm getting into that a bit more now. I have it under control, because I don't want to lose my hair. so I'm like, okay, I gotta rein it in, but it's the only thing I can control. Everything's uncontrollable. Me and Kyle have had a lot of financial issues, in the sense of, I think on here I talked about we're going to do van life. Yeah, that's not happening anymore. We waited for the registration for this van for now 6 months. We just got it yesterday. Someone was supposed to give us a loan, and then they pulled out, and then we were out $10,000. So all of these decisions were made, sober and trying to better our lives, and then things just didn't work out. So it's better to try something than to not try anything at all. But definitely kind of a fucking punch in the gut, you know what I mean? So, that's been huge. Kyle's, I'm not going to speak for him, but his realization on his family and stuff like that's been a lot for him as well. And, winter is hard to get anything done and to do stuff and get stuff taken care of. So that's a whole thing. But I feel like this has actually been a really good pod, and I always get nervous because I always say to myself, I don't have anything to talk about, and and it's like, I do. I have a lot to talk about, actually, and I don't have any friends at all. I don't talk to anybody except for Kyle, and I think that that's purposeful from God right now, to heal and to figure me out, but it's also pretty lonely. So I feel less lonely now that I've been talking, and I probably will listen to this again because I think that there was a lot of good inspiration for some artwork, and I got canvases right in front of me and markers and paint and stuff, and I have an idea of a sculpture I want to build, and I think I'm kind of becoming the person I always wanted to be. I've always wanted to be an artist and a writer and a reader. My home is filled with books and notebooks and art supplies and colorful things, and I think I'm getting there, but it just is very hard sometimes. It's hard to not really have anybody tell you to keep going except for yourself, I think, and it's not the way it was supposed to be. You're supposed to be a family unit. I talked about that on a reel too, the collapse of the family unit in America. But I think I'm gonna pop off now, and I hope that you guys enjoyed this pod. I hope I finished all my thoughts and didn't leave anything. The worst thing is getting off and then realizing you wanted to say something else. New stuff is unlocked, and I'm trying to be more open with myself. So, and I think everybody needs to be in order to be the best version of themselves. So I hope, again, you guys enjoyed the pod, and please feel free to comment, question, all that stuff. I've never said this, and but like and subscribe, because that does help, and it's cool. If you don't want to, I don't care. But I do. I'll say it for just shits and gigs. But have a good morning, evening, afternoon, lunch, whatever the hell you guys are doing, and hopefully I'll pop on here again soon. If not, I'll definitely probably pop on with a reel or something. But toodaloo.